Hey everybody, welcome back to the JPU Show, the show that gives you honest and practical advice for aspiring and veteran podcasters from the founders of the Jax Podcasters United group, like myself, your host, Badr Milligan, and my co-host, the big brain, Blythe Brumleve. Hey Blythe, how you doing?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. We're going to get that on. That's our next merch right there. Hello, hello. I like that. Blythe, today you approve.
I do.
Look at that. You're
Selfishly, yes. Boost my ego.
Okay. Today's topic is one that you have been waiting to talk about, and feverishly, begrudgingly, angrily. You've been waiting to talk about this topic for a minute. I think it needs to be spoken about. We are here to talk about SEO for podcasts and podcasters and the hard-hitting truths that come with it. I admittedly don't know much about SEO for podcasting. You do, though. You know a lot about SEO. I've learned and picked up a couple of things from you, but I still wouldn't call myself an expert on the topic. I know it is not an easy topic to dive into and know about, but you've got some points that you want to bring up and share with the audience. So I give you the floor, madam. Give us the hard truth.
Well, out of curiosity, what are a couple things that you know about podcasting SEO?
Okay. What do I know? Now, some of the stuff might be outdated, so I'm going to put myself on Front Street. I know that, what do I know? That the majority of the search engine optimization, I do know what the SEO stands for. I do know that I've been told that the part, your episode title, it plays a big part in, your ranking and Google searches and things like that. And your podcast name is also important for visibility, also ranking and specifically like podcast apps, which was a big reason why I added or made sure to add a comic book podcast in the name of my show, The Short Box, a comic book talk show. I feel like I should know one other thing to round this out, but those are the two main things. Oh, and then maybe this is a little outdated, but I think I got around to learning about like transcriptions, having like that long form text on your podcast webpage or website also goes a long way into maybe with your SEO ranking and Google finding you and things like that. How am I? Out of those three things, like, is at least one of them still true, or am I completely off kilter?
Okay. So,
oh, God, this hard truth is too much. All right, this is way too hard truth.
Well, it's a reality that is coming to fruition for a lot of SEOs out there. And that's sort of what they call themselves as SEOs, the people who have spent the better part of the last 15 years trying to or paying attention to the signals that Google gives you. So Google controls, still to this day, it is dwindling a little bit, but slightly more than 90% of the search traffic, meaning that someone is going to Google over Bing, over Yahoo. Oh, God, I don't even know. Yahoo, I guess, still has a search engine. I think it might actually be powered by Google now. So yeah, Google still controls 90% of the search engine market. A big part of that market for them is YouTube. And so with the changing and the evolution of how people are searching for things online has created a situation where Google is now, well, historically has had started to show even more ads. So typically the way it works is you have a platform like Instagram is a perfect example. When Instagram first launched, it was all of your friends' content. It was everybody that you really wanted to see, that you followed, that you saw show up in your feed. Then they started introducing ads where an ad would appear after every 10 posts or after every 20 posts. Then they started introducing where an ad appears after 3 or 4 posts. If you are in your stories and you're watching a story from someone, before it automatically shifts to someone else, they add an ad in there. And so typically the reason why companies do that is that they're always looking for ways to monetize their product even more. An additional layer to that, particularly what is affecting Google, is that search has changed in a very dramatic way in the last 4 or 5 years. More and more people are going to said Instagram, are going to TikTok, are going to using ChatGPT, Claude, all of these different tools because they are giving better answers than what Google has been giving. For a lot of the SEOs out there, you have what's called the search liaison. He's a very popular follow that's on Twitter/X. And he has released over the years all of his findings on what is a ranking factor and what isn't a ranking factor. So a lot of these SEOs have built their entire content websites. Some of them have a portfolio of dozens of websites that are all SEO optimized. And you have to do it in a specific way with your headings and with your schema set up. And, there's all of these different technical aspects, but then there's also the content itself. Where search started to mess up is where, think of like a recipe blog, where you're searching for the recipe of something, and God forbid you go to Google to do it, because you're going to end up on some recipe blog website, and sort of the meme around it or the joke around it, you just got to read someone's entire life story before you get to the goddamn recipe. That type of behavior has over time forced people to use Google less and less. As a publicly traded company, what happens when people start using your product less and less is that you still have to show you're making money. And so in order to make money, you have to introduce more ads. And so what happens is like this slow progression into more ads than the content that you're there to see. And so that's the environment that we live in right now, where we have ChatGPT taking away market share from Google. We have TikTok, we have Instagram. All of these different platforms are taking away and chipping away at Google's dominance and their moneymaker that they've had for a long time. Very recently, there was a Google leak, and the leak revealed that a lot of the things that Search Liaison and other SEO experts have been spouting off for years is false. And so for a lot of people who have spent the time to try and SEO their way to podcasting success, frankly, there is no proof that this works in podcasting. No proof. Unless you take the mindset of, because you have to also consider with Apple or with Spotify, they don't release how their search algorithm functions. They don't release any of that. So all it is right now is just a theory. Your theory of putting a comic book podcast in your show title is likely correct, and it is likely the only source that Apple and Spotify are looking at. Because the way that search works is that you have these crawlers, you have these bots that crawl your content, that scans your content. So it's scanning the headline. Ideally, it's scanning the show notes, the description, and the transcript. We have no evidence whatsoever that the description, that the show notes, and that the transcript are being searched.
Everything I know is a lie, is what you're saying. Wow.
Well, everything that Google has taught us from a historic SEO perspective, we don't know is true anymore. Frankly, because Google is dealing with a lot of these issues where folks are trying to have a question answered. Google is not answering that question, or it's a bad user experience, like the recipe blog example. And so with all of this AI content, I mean, there's already a ton of content that these bots have to scan from a website perspective, a landing page, a blog post, things like that. So when they're scanning, they can't scan an audio file. They can't scan a video feed. What they can scan is your transcript. So with that being said, the search engine, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Google, has to be searching. Their crawlers have to be searching that transcript or that show description for you to stand a chance. There is no confirmation whatsoever from any of these companies that they are actually scanning that information. So for me in particular, I auto import my transcripts into my website. I have seen zero to no impact on adding the transcript to my podcast. I have tinkered with this. There are a couple different ideas that I think I'm going to tweak. For example, the transcript is such a terrible reading experience. But if you take that transcript and you turn it into a blog post, then that will theoretically significantly impact your SEO rankings, because Google knows how to scan a blog post. Their bots don't necessarily know how to read a transcript. And the reason, because they can't read between the two, is a transcript is a block of text. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of resources for those bots to scan that content. And so what Google, from an SEO perspective, from a bot perspective, has done is they read the article. They read the headline of the article, and then they also read headlines in the blog post itself. And so
really
those,
quick, really quick, I'm sorry. And these bots, crawlers is what you were saying. They definitely don't know how to listen to an audio feed or a podcast. Okay.
No. So the only success that I have seen from an SEO perspective, meaning I know that that traffic is coming predominantly from Google, is when I have made a specific landing page or a specific blog post and I'm talking about the episode. And then I link to the episode, or I use an embed player, like from, Buzzsprout has the ability to embed, one episode or several. I have landing pages that have embedded, I have a player with like 10 episodes on it. I have another landing page with 1 episode on it. Those episodes do very well because, in my theory, is that Google knows how to read the blog post, but they're not reading the transcripts. All of the other 400 episodes that are on my website, if I don't have a blog post that links to it, it doesn't register as far as search engines are concerned. Then there's the added layer of the technical setup. And I don't have the time or the desire to go through all of the technical qualifications that your website needs in order to register with search engines. But there is the technical component, which is often overlooked and missed from the majority of people who are talking about SEO for podcasting. If I was looking before this show of who is actually doing SEO right for their podcast, what are sort of the tips out there? And the only tips I could find are website tips. So make sure you have a website. Make sure you write a blog post. Make sure you have an H1 heading as your title. And then you go through the post and all of your other headings are either H2, H3, H4. This is only going to make sense for the folks who understand what the verbiage that I'm talking about. But there is a technical component that is almost more important than the content itself. And because of the added layer of AI, there's so much of this content that can be created like that. And so Google is having a tremendous time trying to sort through what's the good content that's going to keep users coming back and keep users to use their platform and not go to all these other places, versus what is the low quality content. Because content can be created at such a rapid pace right now, you have a situation, I believe it was a few months ago, where Tiananmen Square, the famous photo of the guy standing up to, politically standing up and, stands in the middle of the street while a military profession, is that what it's called? Procession. Military procession is going through the streets. He stands in front of the tank very defiantly. Unfortunately, a lot of people know what happened after that, but that image should be one of the top ranked images whenever you search for Tiananmen Square. But if you go and you search for it, AI photos show up. And so this signals that Google has no idea how to differentiate between AI focused content and content that is high quality. And so the hard truth is that nobody knows what the hell is going on. We're experimenting, we can try, but I think for the majority of podcasters, you try to focus on the title, you add your podcast to YouTube, and hope for the best. That is really the only way right now, as far as a clear path forward, if you are worried about SEO for your podcast, is to frankly not really worry about it all that much. Focus on making good content and then sharing it with your audience on social media, email newsletters, even adding your podcast to YouTube, because there's also the formula of, I'll give a few SEO tips later on. to focus on the headline and what keywords you should use and things like that. That is the big picture of what's going on in the world of SEO, where you have a lot of people who are talking online about how to SEO your podcast. They frankly do not know, because these platforms do not know, or these platforms do not release what is involved in the metrics behind the SEO for their particular platform. So SEO as a whole, the 90% dominance that Google has enjoyed for the last 15 years is non-existent. It's going to continue to be chipped away because they don't know how to differentiate from a robot perspective of how to make the good content, come to the surface and bury the other content that is low quality and low value. And so there are a handful of ways that you can try to combat this and try to combat against a lot of the AI engines that are just pumping out 15,000 word articles just to crush you from an SEO perspective. But I guess the comfort in this is just knowing that there are still some ways that you can optimize for SEO, but being able to have sort of, I think, the heyday of SEO traffic, it's evolved so much that folks really don't know which way to go. And I feel like that's hopefully this is maybe more comforting to podcasters who are worried that they have to learn this additional, mechanism for marketing. My advice is, if you're worried about SEO, just make sure your most important keywords, and I can go into that in just a second, but make sure those keywords are in the title. And then make sure that title is also on YouTube, because YouTube is the second largest search engine for now. But if you have the video component, then in the search engine rankings, where Google is now still playing with the search results page, where if you go to Google right now, you type in an answer, they're trying to give you like the AI overview answers, and they're getting a little bit better about it. But then you get into sort of the layout of the page itself, where it's the AI overview, then it's the sponsored post. And then you get into the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now they don't even have, sort of the second page or the third page and so on and so forth. It's just an endless scroll. So there's all of these different ways that Google is trying to combat this. But I think for a lot of podcasters, do not stress yourself out about a medium that is in flux, and that there is really no true path, because the path that we thought we knew is not there anymore. It is disappeared, and maybe it wasn't there ever to begin with, because Google was caught lying about their, what mattered in search. And so it's a tough medium, but don't stress yourself out about learning this additional one. Just focus on making good content.
Great landing. I got to say, I was feeling pretty down the whole time listening to that. But
I'm sweating now talking about this.
But I love your point about it is one less thing that a podcaster has to worry about. I think it also spotlights the value of having your own website. I think it also brings it back to something that we're always stressing, which is content is the most important part of podcasting. Content is king, as well as engaging and having a strong audience and followership. Complex problem you brought up with a bunch of complex, doesn't even sound like answers just yet, but
no,
a lot of complexity.
Well, to offer a few, I guess, areas of, if you do want to explore SEO for your podcast, definitely get a website. Definitely make sure it's on WordPress. I know, Squarespace, Wix, all of those other things are much easier to, I guess, get started on. But WordPress is, frankly, it's open source. There's a reason why more than 60% of the entire web is powered by WordPress. They have the SEO technical setup in order to make it your show and your brand discoverable. You have to be, at minimum, discoverable. And fixing your SEO on, say, like Squarespace or Wix, there's no telling that they even know from their own sort of setup. Well, maybe Squarespace, because Squarespace did buy Google domains, but that's neither here nor there. Make sure you have a website. The website that you get from podcast hosts, you can't really customize it. So it's a good sort of, Band-Aid on a broken arm in the meantime. But what's really, if you are worried about, sort of, I guess, longevity, I would still suggest getting a very basic, like 3 to 5 page website. That way you look more real in the eyes of your audience, which is a big thing. You want to be trustworthy in the eyes of your audience. If they do a search for you, you want to show up and you want to control that experience. And the website is the only way you can control that experience. Now, for individual episodes, what I like to teach people is called the ABC method. So open up Google on a private browser, go to the search bar, and think about the episode that you want to create. Type in the first keywords that come to mind when you think about that particular topic. 1 or 2 words, that's it. Then hit the space bar and type the letter A and see what automatically fills. If any of those are relative to the episode you want to create, that's the topic that I would choose. And that's probably the framing that I would choose too. I don't know if you want me to share my screen and like show an example of this, but you're going to do this. It's called the ABC method because you're going to use that same phrase, spacebar A, spacebar B, spacebar C, and so on and so forth. You're going to go through the whole alphabet in order to find that keyword topic that is going to resonate. Because what that tells you, that autofill tells you, is that Google has seen that search traffic enough for that particular autofill phrase that they're going to list it in the autofill. So that is a signal from Google that that search engine keyword has enough traffic to justify putting it in the autofill. So click on that page and see what search results come up. See what other YouTubers or people on YouTube or other podcasters have created. Are there blog posts out there covering this topic? And you're going to do that throughout the alphabet. And then you're going to use that keyword phrase that you find that is the most similar to the topic that you want to talk about. You're going to put those keyword phrases at the start of your title, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's in your podcast player. Those first few words are the first words that show up in your title. Because we talked earlier that we know that they have the capabilities or the bandwidth to scan your titles. But what they're probably not doing is they're not spending unnecessary dollars, cloud storage, computing capabilities, things like that. They're not spending those extra dollars to scan your transcript. It's just not happening. I would argue that you still need to include your transcript for ADA purposes, Americans with Disability Act, because you want to make your podcast accessible to the widest audience. And I just think it's kind of like the right thing to do. The better way to do it, though, is to take that transcript and turn it into a blog post. So that's sort of my spiel, is that use the ABC. If you're really worried about it, use the ABC method to come up with those keywords, and then use those keywords at the very beginning of your episode title. Bonus points if you can send it to YouTube, because YouTube is a very good search engine. Google,
Bravo.
not so much.
I've learned so much. You basically hosted this episode by yourself. This was the Blythe Brumleaf Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. No, that was eye-opening, and those tips at the end. I think I'm actually going to adopt that Google ABC trick for a future episode to see what are some of the popular keywords in my space and my topic.
And to go a step further, once you click on that keyword phrase, whether you're on letter F or letter Y, there's sections on the search results page that says people also asked. I said earlier that there's like an infinite scroll when it comes to your search results. That's not actually live for everybody. I believe other people are still on the click to page 2 to see the next one. And if that is still the case, there are other areas of content, because Google wants to point you in the right direction to find the content you're looking for. And so they will suggest other top people also asked, people also searched for. Look in those sections and click on those sections. And then you can check out the competition that is ranking for those keywords. And so it's a good indicator of, is this shitty content ranking for this keyword phrase? Oh, I can make it better. And that's the mindset that you should have. And it goes back to making better content. But at least this way you can kind of see what the level playing field is. Use this same tactic on social media as well. TikTok in particular has a very good search. I don't think Instagram and Facebook are very good with their searches. That might change in the future, but TikTok is very good with search. And also, we don't know yet. I was going to get into a little bit of like optimizing your content for AI, but we just frankly don't know enough yet to even give you any kind of tips. So use the ABC autofill method, create a blog post from your transcript, get a website. Those are probably my top 3 tips. Oh, and send your show to YouTube if you're worried about SEO.
Blythe, you have said a lot. You've given me some dread to work through, but also some hope. Glad to know that we got people like you out here giving us the hard truths and giving us, practical advice. And that's what we're all about here on the show. And I think it's a good time as ever to turn the tables on our listeners and subscribers and get their opinion on this topic. What do you think about SEO for podcasting? Do you have any tips and tricks to add to the list? Do you have any questions that maybe we can make a future episode about or address in a future episode? Let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are listening to the podcast version, send us some fan mail. We got a link in the show notes where you could send us a direct text message. We would love to get some feedback, some questions, some thoughts, some whatever. Let us know what you think about this episode.
And lastly, if you tried the ABC method, I would love to use it as a way to also come up with different content ideas as well. Like there might be things that, and the people also asked or people also searched for, there might be ideas in there that you never even thought of. And so use it as a way to generate ideas of what you should be talking about. Maybe you click on one of those things and it's not covered very well. That's an open door for you to know that Google thinks of this phrase very highly, that they're going to put it in autofill, and all of this other content on this page sucks. So I can make it better, and I hopefully can have people discover my content through those mechanisms.
There we go. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed already, do me a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening. I think I've already given my spiel, so I'm just going to go ahead and say thanks again for listening. Catch us around. We'll catch you around. And until then, take care of yourselves. Peace.